Hello everyone. I decided to come on here and do a quick-ish video. I always say it's going to be quick and then it ends up 30 minutes. But I had someone reach out to me in my Instagram channel and ask me some questions about being able to connect to your spirit guides. And I thought, well, this would be a fantastic topic for me to do a YouTube video about. So stay in touch with my content and with my page here and on Instagram. And my Instagram handle is somatic_intuitive. And look out for a webinar because I think I am going to do an hour-long class on this. It'll be a low-cost offering. And, so hopefully a lot of you can get there. But I do have a lot of questions around this topic, and people are very interested in how they can connect to their spirit teams. And this is I think we're at a time where we're really understanding that we are quantum beings and we have this ability to connect to beings outside of this physical reality. And I think many people are informed that we do have spirit teams, we do have beings around us, ancestors, and, angels and extraterrestrials, in this spirit world that we can't see, but certainly a lot of us can feel it. A lot of us do get, messages and downloads from these types of beings. And, for a lot of us, we know it's possible, but we're like, I can't reach it. Like something's happening. How do I do it? How do I do it? We need instructions, right? Well, the first question that I got, I'm just going to address this because there was a couple, and I do want to make this video brief because there's so many different ways I could go in teaching this topic or giving you guys a little bit of seeds of information. But I do want to keep it concise and just give you kind of my maybe the most important pieces from my perspective. Now, everybody, certainly all of us who consider ourselves to be psychic experience things a little bit differently. So I'm just want to preface, I am sharing this information from my experience and how I have experienced lack of connection and then the opening of connection and what that's been like for me. Somebody else might have something very different. I do know of people who have had a lot of trauma and they did not experience being cut off like I was from my trauma. So it just depends, I know somebody who, in some ways, sometimes, that opening is much bigger with the trauma. It's not boundaried and really, lack of a better word, there's not containment and sort of control, I guess. And so they're picking up so much, right? But some people really can hear other beings coming in and have always known that it was another being, and they didn't have cognitive dissonance and gaslighting around it, and from a very young age, knew that they were listening to voices from the other side. That was not my experience. This person that I'm thinking of did also have trauma. Her trauma just didn't affect her in the ways that mine did, which was a lot of gaslighting and not knowing what was going on, and again, having a lot of cognitive dissonance around what was actually coming through my brain. I just thought that I had an overactive brain, which I did as well, right? And that was part of the problem. So I just want to preface and say, again, not everyone is going to experience exactly the same trauma and the same blocks and the same openings and the same downloads as the next person. So I'm just giving you my experience. Okay, so the first question is, and this is the main question that I'm going to tackle on this webinar, around this YouTube video, and it is complex. Am I embodied enough to connect? So my hunch is, if you're asking that question, the simple answer would probably be no. Because we can't force ourselves into embodiment so we can connect. That is kind of an oxymoron, right? Embodiment is just a word for describing safety, right? So like there has to be safety. I mean, embodiment is a little bit more than just safety, but safety has to be present for someone to drop into their body. There is just no other way, right? So safety obviously takes trust. That is a process that happens as we heal our trauma and regulate our nervous systems. We become embodied, and we become, another word would be grounded. So our energy, mine has always kind of floated. When I became more embodied and my nervous system regulated, my body started to settle into itself, okay? So when the body settles into itself and there's safety and trust happening, what has happened to make that possible was that we healed our trauma. We healed some of the dysregulation and chaos and other things that were happening that disconnected us from our bodies in the first place. Okay? So once there's a settling in the body and there's trust, all of a sudden the messages that have been coming through, again, my experience, not going to be exactly the same for everybody, become more attuned. You become more attuned to your own inner voice and your spirit team, and you have enough settling in your own system to decipher what messages are coming from who, which ones are downloads, and which ones are our fear, okay? Now, I want to explain as well, like we're always having, like, they're always connecting with us. There was never a time, again, the way I know it, my experience, there was never a time where my spirit team was not connecting to me, right? It's what was in the way for me that I couldn't hear the message. And that was all of my fear. That's really it. I mean, if I were to just simplify this for everybody, right? There's a disconnection from the self with trauma. Self is here, disconnection is here. And when we are disconnected and we're traumatized as little ones and all the things that we experience as humans, all of a sudden our highest self is battling this noise of our inner child, our wounded 8-year-old, our wounded 12-year-old, our father and our mothers, their patterning that they instilled on us. So now highest self has messages from all these other places. There's this direct line to our spirit teams, right? But what's happening is this highest self is also getting, our psyche, our human self, not really our highest self, but our human psyche is interpreting messages from mom and dad, shame, our inner child voices, right? Our wounded, all the things. We could have experienced an in utero trauma, and that could be affecting our body and our disconnect. Actually, it will if that happened. We may have, been born in with some sort of dysregulation and lack of safety, okay? So for me, what happened was this connection, let's just say the connection to my highest self is, comes from here, right? All these other little things that were coming in started to get healed. So all these other voices started to get a little softer, and there was less of them, right? And when they would come in, I go, oh, that's fear. Because I have safety and trust now in my own wisdom, in my own body, my path to what is for lack of a better term, like right and wrong, my like discernment is more attuned to what my soul is asking of me and my dharma, my soul mission. Okay. And so when those little messages might come in, I'm like, that's my wounded 8-year-old. What can I do for her right now? And let her feel soothed. And the second she feels soothed, boom, my direction comes in again. Does that make sense? So am I embodied enough to connect? Again, I would have to ask the question back is like, if you're asking that question, the likelihood is like no, because we feel embodiment is a felt sense. And if we're doing the work to have that start to happen, there's kind of no denying it. It's really obvious. People who knew me a few years ago and people who know me now, like it's a vastly different experience to be my friend, and to know me now than 4 or 5 years ago. And so we experience the world differently when we're embodied. We don't have as many triggers when we're embodied. And we don't question the messages that are coming in through our spirit teams, right? So the road to embodiment is very complex, and that's what I talk about the most. Obviously, my nervous system work and my somatic work has been life-changing for me. And I didn't do that because I wanted to connect to my spirit teams. That was just a result of something that happened. Before I was embodied, I was flooded with information. I wasn't totally sure what was coming from who, but I was always being flooded with information, right? It's just that I didn't trust myself. And so I was gaslighting the messages that were coming through. And now there's enough space and time between my messages. There's enough stillness and slowness in my own experience as a human that a message comes through and I can go, who is that? Right? Oh, that's my extraterrestrial light team. Or that's my grandmother. And the voices, they sound different in my head. They also come from a different part of the brain. Who it comes from a different part of the brain. It's usually on my left side where that comes in. Okay? Sometimes it's in the front. And yeah, I have enough slowness and stillness and embodiment. My body's grounded and anchored into the earth enough that when I'm moving in my daily life, let's say I'm interacting with my kids or I'm, cooking a meal or something, right? I'm not moving in chaos and overwhelm anymore. So a message comes in and I can pause and I can go, oh, thanks guys. Appreciate that. I got it, right? Whereas before I was out of my body, I was always being flooded with all my inner being, my inner wounded self, and those conflicts and adversity messages of distrust, okay? And the way that my body showed up in my daily life didn't allow me to, and all those messages coming through were also like contributing to the disconnection and contributing to the chaos in my own body and the fear and the overwhelm and the anxiety, that it just wasn't really possible for me to be noticing in that presence, right? It's loud. It was loud for me. Again, this is my experience. And so now it's more quiet. Again, I don't have as many wounded parts of myself trying to like scream at me, right? And so embodiment is not something we can force to receive messages. Like, if that's what you're trying to do, I feel like there's a bit of a disconnection even just in that intention. So lack of embodiment is showing up in your life probably in other ways. It's not just about the fact that you can't connect to your spirit teams. That's just a result. So my question to everybody would be for you to ask yourself, how is my disembodiment also showing up in my life? That might be an easier place to start from. For me, again, it was that chaos, my inability to connect to my kids, my inability to feel my body, on my fear of my body, my fear of what I felt in my body, right? So that's all the ways that, my fear of my pain, emotional and physical, my fear of my fatigue and how I felt every day, my fear of my autoimmune disease, my fear of my parent figures, my fear of my kid's dad. I mean, list goes on and on. And so for me, it wasn't my journey wasn't, I have to become embodied. I mean, may have been something I learned along the way. It was, I need to heal some of these other things. Why can't I connect to my kids? Why can't I, why do I have this autoimmune? For me, it was like, I had to be better. I had to get better physically. And that's how my personal journey started. Now, if you don't have some of those types of same patterns, again, I would just ask yourself, like, how is the lack of embodiment showing up for me? We have to, if we have never been embodied, it's hard for someone to describe what it feels like. It's hard to it's hard to like tell somebody, oh, you should become more embodied. Certainly connecting to our spirit teams is like this great after effect of like what happens, or maybe that is your intention, but it's like I think it's helpful if there's like another more tangible way that you can get clear on the ways in which you're disembodied, or the things that are happening in your life that you really want to heal. As a result of healing some of those core wounds, the body becomes into itself. Again, it's all about safety and trust, and the ability to distinguish what voice is saying what. Now, I know that not everybody has voices in their heads. I know not everybody has like images. I'm very visual and audio, so I do get a lot of voices all the time, and I also get visuals all the time as well, right? But what happens when we start to become regulated, a lot of people report like, oh, I remember my dreams now. Like, our spirit teams are always trying to connect to us in our dreams. There's always, our psyche is connecting to us, our higher self. Our fears can show up in our dreams to tell us certain messages, and certainly our spirit teams come to us in our dreams. And so if you don't remember your dreams, that is a clear sign that your sleep isn't where it needs to be, and that is also some dysregulation, maybe more freeze impacting those parts of the brain. Because again, if there's not safety, then the body starts to forget as a means of protection, right? And so we're meant to remember our dreams. If we aren't, then that's another sign there's some sort of disconnection. Okay, and then with regulation, with more us healing some of those older patterns, freeze starts to come off, and we start remembering things. We start remembering the body is safe, feels safer for us to remember these things. And that's the point that I feel like is really great to like start from in terms of like hearing your spirit teams. I will say, you know, when I started my nervous system journey, you know, it was pretty soon after I started my nervous system journey, I had very, very, very clear and direct dreams with an extraterrestrial light team called the Arcturians, and they were very clear. It was like I woke up and there was no denying it. Now, they could have tried to have these types of communications with me before, and either I forgot, my body wouldn't let me remember. I don't know that they're telling me right now, like, oh, it was pointless because I wasn't in a place to be able to receive that. It may have actually scared me. And so I had to get enough healing work in that they knew I would feel safe enough to be able to accept the message and remember it. So enough freeze had to go. I had to be embodied enough to be able to wake up and go, oh my gosh, that happened. There wasn't gaslighting and fear around it. And, you know, remember it. And so, anyway, that is my quick video on am I embodied enough to connect? I hope what I told you here was helpful, and stay tuned. I would love to do a whole webinar on this. I know it's a hot topic, and you guys seem like a lot of people are wanting to know more about this topic, and you know, I would love to provide that information. So hopefully I'll see you at the next video. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.